My thanks to Bring Me to Life Radio, and welcome to the Cinema Scribe. It's a rare feat when a film covers so much ground that it gives us a lot to take in and assess. In doing so, such stories may well make us feel more than a little uncomfortable, and rightfully so, as they prompt us to take a hard look at what we're experiencing and how it came about. They may even push us toward taking action and changing what's going on, even if they make us squirm a bit as we move towards such a decision. So it is with the controversial new fantasy tale, Joker. Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, has his share of issues. The psychologically challenged Gotham City resident struggles to hold it together with the aid of a cocktail of prescription meds and the regular but largely indifferent counseling of a public aid social worker, played by Sharon Washington. He ekes out a living as a special event clown, working jobs like retail clearance sales and visits to pediatric hospitals, where he shows off his distinctive cackle and fancy footwork. And when he's not engaged with the foregoing, he spends his time caring for his aging live-in mother, Penny, played by Frances Conroy, who has mental and physical challenges of her own. For all intents and purposes, Arthur leads a pretty bleak existence. He and Penny live in a rundown apartment building in a marginal neighborhood, one that epitomizes everything that's wrong with Gotham City. But if that weren't enough, Arthur is repeatedly harassed by strangers who assault him or steal his property, particularly when he's dressed up in his clown outfit. He attempts to fight back, but he's often hassled by packs of thugs, making it difficult to defend himself. It's a wonder how he's able to cope. However, despite all these travails, Arthur manages to hold out hope for a better future. Having long been told by his mother that his purpose in life was to spread joy to others, Arthur aspires to become a stand-up comedian, perhaps even getting booked on a late-night TV talk show hosted by an entertainer he greatly admires, Murray Franklin, played by Robert De Niro. And the first step toward that goal comes when Arthur gets a chance to try out his act at a local comedy club. Things could be looking up. What's more, Arthur has hopes for becoming involved in a meaningful relationship. He's particularly attracted to his neighbor, Sophie, played by Zazie Beetz, a young single mother who seems to be on the same wavelength as him. And when he believes she's showing some interest, he's even more enthused. But no sooner do Arthur's hopes get raised when reality comes crashing down. He's left to contend with the ongoing difficulties of his circumstances, as well as those of his mother, who often slips into bouts of delusion. For instance, she's perplexed that she doesn't receive responses to the many requests for help that she sends to Thomas Wayne, played by Brett Cullen, one of Gotham's wealthiest residents and a recently announced mayoral candidate for whom she once worked. Arthur tries to explain to her that it's unlikely that she'll hear from him, given that Mr. Wayne employed her only briefly many years ago, and that he probably doesn't remember her, despite her fervent hope that she'll hear from him. It's truly sad. But just when it seems things couldn't get any worse, circumstances deteriorate even further. Arthur learns that his public aid support is being cut. Then he loses his job and suffers another attack while on his way home, this time at the hands of a trio of obnoxious Wall Street types, with tragic consequences. He then learns a shocking secret that his mother has been harboring, a revelation that immediately precedes her hospitalization for a stroke. And to top it off, he sees video footage of his comedy club performance on Murray's show, presented in an insensitive and unflattering light. In the meantime, conditions in Gotham begin spiraling out of control, especially where unchecked street crime and the increasingly inflammatory mayoral race is concerned. Criticism against candidate Wayne is running hot and heavy, especially in connection with comments he's made about Gotham residents disdainful of the city's wealthy elite. Having referred to these oppressed, largely working-class individuals as clowns, Wayne's detractors respond by embracing the derogatory label plastered on them. Masses of citizens wearing clown masks and outfits mobilize to protest the disempowerment and injustice they feel, spreading chaos far and wide. By this point, Arthur is at wit's end. He's had as much as he can handle. He decides that it's time to retaliate, especially now that he has a pair of detectives, played by Shea Whigham and Bill Camp, following him. And with conditions being what they are, he's inspired to take what he considers to be appropriate measures in response. But considering how Arthur sees the world, those responses are unlikely to be of the kind expected in a civil society. With the clown phenomenon sweeping the city, Arthur, as one of the movement's ironic predecessors, joins the fray, assuming the persona Joker, one that he believes reflects his emerging mindset, and one that will prove ironically fitting as he seeks retribution against all of those whom he believes have wronged him. So what's one to make of all this? Joker is the kind of film that draws a variety of responses depending upon one's own interpretation. For instance, it's more than a little obvious that the circumstances that define the characters and setting of the picture's narrative are a mirror of present-day conditions off the screen. We feel connected to those in the film because they mirror what many of us believe about our world these days. This thus creates a link between what we're feeling and what we're watching, an uncanny parallel that may evoke reactions that feel like they hit more than a little too close to home. The frustration that Arthur feels reminds many of us of the exasperation that we feel with regard to many of today's ills. Ineffectual self-serving politicians, indifferent money-grabbing corporations, rampant violent crime, and insensitivity toward those with special needs, to name a few. And the more he adheres to those beliefs, the more pervasive these conditions become. However, if he ever hopes for anything better, he must change his views, taking them in other directions, something that we must do as well if we hope for new circumstances to become established in our reality. Instead, however, Arthur relishes these conditions, embracing them more than ever as his story plays out. A potent cautionary tale for us, too, if we ever hope for our conditions to change. Even though Arthur and his followers seek to redress what they're experiencing, they fight back using means comparable to what they claim to detest. In essence, they perpetuate the prevailing conditions by employing like tactics in combating what they supposedly consider unacceptable. Arthur's behavior calls to mind such cinematic anti-heroes as those seen in films like Taxi Driver, The King of Comedy, and Falling Down. There's quite an irony in that, as the oppressed seek to become the oppressors. And it's not an answer for those who hope for their situations to change. Again, something viewers should ponder as they seek to do the same in their world. This scenario arises in various segments of society, such as the treatment of the mentally ill and nonconformists. But at bottom in all these situations is a failure to consider alternatives, to look for new ways aimed at rectifying these matters. Instead of examining ways to set things to right, we sink deeper and deeper into the mess we're in, creating an ever-deepening hole that becomes increasingly difficult for us to extract ourselves from. That's a bleak prospect, one that bolsters the dark nature of this film, and a view of our off-screen world that's unfortunately becoming all too entrenched. In tackling the foregoing, Joker takes on quite a formidable task, and it's to be lauded for its attempt to nudge movies in the comic book genre in an entirely new direction. And in doing so, it gets many aspects right, such as its excellent 1970s-style production design and the mostly solid, though occasionally hammy, performance by Joaquin Phoenix. It also sends a clear warning to us about ourselves, albeit one that's both cautionary and potentially incendiary at the same time. Yet, despite these strengths, the picture has its share of problems as well. Uneven pacing, mishandled backstory revelations, heavy-handed socio-political allegories, excessive narrative elements, violence bordering on gratuitous, and plot holes aplenty all conspire to weaken an otherwise ambitious production. What's more, at the risk of playing spoiler, the film features an ending that's out of place compared to the apparent climax that preceded it. And then there are derivative elements taken almost verbatim from a variety of other pictures, including the aforementioned Taxi Driver, King of Comedy, and Falling Down, as well as Network, among others. What this movie gets right is indeed impressive, but unfortunately, there's not enough of that compared to the package overall. In this case, the glass truly is half empty. Given the breadth of territory that Joker seems to cover, it's undoubtedly one of those pictures that's creating considerable conversation and on a multitude of fronts, many of which are addressed in a lengthy review on my website at brentmarchant.com. In that regard, the film could be doing us all a favor by prompting discussion of conditions that we've long been all too willing to disregard. The 800-pound gorilla in our society has been indeed identified and exposed. But will we take advantage of this opportunity to bring about meaningful change? Or will we descend even further into the mess we've created, giving us inspiration to further justify unacceptable behavior and perpetuate ineffectual attitudes? There's a lot of food for thought in that. So get ready to grab your fork and dig in. I'm Brent Marchant, the Cinema Scribe. Thanks for listening.
A lifelong movie fan and longtime student of metaphysics, Cinema Scribe Brent Marchant is the award-winning author of Get the Picture, Conscious Creation Goes to the Movies, Consciously Created Cinema, The Movie Lover's Guide to the Law of Attraction, and Third Reel Conscious Creation Goes Back to the Movies, all of which provide reader-friendly looks at how the practice of conscious creation, also known as the Law of Attraction, is illustrated through film. Brett maintains an ongoing blog about metaphysical cinema and other self-empowerment topics through his website, www.brentmarchant.com. He's also the movie correspondent for the Good Radio Network and New Consciousness Review magazine and radio, with additional writing contributions to Smart Women's Empowerment, The Happy Guide, Library Journal, BeliefNet, Vivid Life, New Age News, and Master Heart Magazine. Brett holds a BA in Magazine Journalism and History from Syracuse University. Again, check him out at www.brentmarchant.com.